Welcome to this tutorial. In this video, I will go through iteration. So in Python, there are two main ways to iterate through data. And iteration means that you can go through something and basically do things a repeated amount of times. And this is quite useful in programming because oftentimes you want to search through data, you would like to find something in data, or you would like to just go through all data and display it, or compute something and calculate things. So iteration is one of the key fundamentals in programming. So let's look at how we can iterate. So this is an example where we iterate through a sequence of numbers. So I initially set a variable called val to be 0, and I print the value as long as it's less than 6. So while val is less than 6, I need to print, I will print the value, and I will also increment the value by 1. And this is important because if you forget this, then you end up in an infinite loop, because it will never get to 6 or greater than 6. So this value condition will always evaluate to be true, and then you will never end this this program, and the program will crash. So always remember to make sure that this condition is at some point no longer evaluating to true. So let's try to run this to see what happens. So we see that it prints out, let me just zoom in a bit, I think it becomes easier. So what it does is that it prints out 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then when it is incremented to 6, this will no longer be true, and therefore it just jumps out of the while loop. Let's look at another example, and this is similar, but the difference is that it has a break statement. So a break statement, what it means is that it can break out of the loop at some point. So you can say that this should no longer continue iterating. So I'll say, as long as set value initially to 0, as long as value is less than 6, start printing out the value, print an empty tab, or I guess it's an empty line. And then if value is equivalent to 2, then we want to break out of this loop. Otherwise, we want to increment it by 1. So if I run this, we see that it only it starts at 0, it prints out the value the first time, then it prints out an empty line, and then it checks if value is 2, which it is not at that point because it's 0. Then it doesn't go inside here, it just continues to increment it by 1, and then it's 1, and that is less than 6, so it prints out 1, and then it prints out the empty line, and it checks if value is 2. No, it's not, because it's 1, and then it increments it by 1, and then if 2 is less than 6, that is true. 2 is less than 6, then it prints out 2, and it prints out the empty line, and then it checks if value is 2, then it should break. So it should jump out of this loop, and it will not increment it either. It will just break. It will just stop executing the loop at this point, and it will jump out of the whole loop. So that's good to know, that it's possible to break out of a loop, so to say. Let's look at the other way, or another way to iterate through data and loop through data. So what is usually known as a for loop in many programming languages. And so in Python, there's also a for keyword, and you can iterate through values of an array, for example, a list in this case. So we have a fruits list, so it's a list of strings. We can see that by hovering over it. It's a list of strings. So apple, banana, and pear. So if I print this out, I want to see apple, and then banana, and then pear. Let's see what happens if I print this out. Yeah, so we see apple, and then banana, and pear. So it's a nice way to just loop through data, and it's quite simple syntax: for fruit, in fruits, print fruit. Pretty straightforward. Let's look at another example of a for loop. So this is a bit different. So here I'm looping through another type of sequence, which is in this case is a string, and we know that a string is simply a sequence of characters. So therefore, it's possible to actually print out each letter of this string. So P and then R, O, G, and so on. Let's see what happens if I print this out. Yeah, so we see P, R, O, G, and so on. So it's printing each character at a time, which is also nice to know. And a good note is that if you've programmed in other languages, then you might have come across another syntax for loops. So usually you define like a variable, you set it to 0. Like usually the convention is to say I is equal to 0, and then you say I is less than something, some value, and then I plus plus. That's kind of a quite normal syntax in many programming languages. But this is quite different in the sense that it's not the typical for loop that you would see in Java or JavaScript or C# and so on. It's a bit different, but at the same time, I would say this is more like an iterator method in other languages. That's kind of, yeah, nothing you need to know now, but just to keep in mind. So let's look at something else. Now we're looking at intervals. So sometimes, let's say you want to do something an amount or an amount of times. So you can say, I want to print something 6 times, for example. So I'm saying for the range of 6, for num in range 6, print num. So let's see what happens if I print this out. Oops. Let's see. So now the console is kind of let's see. So we see that it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry for spamming the console now, but I hope you see the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we see that we can kind of specify or define the interval. Another example would be to specify the range and increments by 3. So this is a bit different. So now what we're doing now is that we're saying, okay, let's start with 2, and you see that in this signature it says that the start is the first parameter is a start index. So we start at the index of 2 and we stop at 12. Keep in mind that the stop, or the actual stop, it is, you see that it says 6, but it stops at 5. So why would that be? And the reason is that 6 would be kind of I usually think of it as stop at but not including. So if that makes sense. So if we say 6, then we basically mean to the from 0 to 5. And we know that in programming usually we start at 0. So we always start indices at 0. So the first, let's say in this string, the first character is at the index of 0. That is something you should keep in mind. That's also valid for arrays or lists. So the first element of a list would be at the index of 0, and this is at the index of 1 and the index of 2. So always remember that 0 is the first index. So that if we say 6, then we basically mean from 0 to 5. So here I say 2, so it will be from 2 to basically we'll stop at 11. If I'm not mistaken, but it will also increment by 3. So this so the default is that it increments by 1, but now you can also say that no, I want this to increment. You can say how many steps it should move forward. Should it move forward by 1, like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or should it move by 2, so 0, 2, 4, 6, or by 3, so 0, 3, 6, 9. So this should give 0, or it should if it starts at 2, will be 2, and then I guess 5, and then 8, and then 12. But I'm not sure if the 12 will actually be printed. Let's find out. Let's see what happens. Yeah. So I said 12. I meant 11. So 2, 5, 8, 11. So we see that it starts at 2, then it jumps to 5, and then 8, and then 11. And then it stops because we said that it should be including 12, or it's 11. Yeah, I hope you understand this and that it doesn't confuse you. So yeah, you can define the start, the stop, and the step. Keep that in mind. You could also iterate backwards. So you could say, let's start at 5 and end at 0, 1, but yeah, it is 0. Minus 1, but it's actually 0. And you say, let's go backwards. So 5, 4, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's so difficult when you speak and show things at the same time. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. I would say would be the expected output. Let's see. Yeah, so the output is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And this is different. So what this does is you can always iterate by the length of something. So a string has a length, so does a list. So the length of this would be 3, right? Because you have 3 elements. The length of this string would be, yeah, what? 4, 8, 11, right? So you can do the same here. So let's say this is 5 and this is, yeah, so 11. So the length should be 11. So that would be the same as, we could actually, if you want to, we can say print, let's print out the length of this. Maybe I can just, yeah, run it like that. So if I just print it out, I hope you see. So it's so this is 10, right? Because the length of this is, yeah, it's 10 basically. So let's see what happens if I print out the index of this. Let's see what happens. So the reason why it's 10 and not 11, even though we see that the amount of characters here is 11, is that, as I said, it doesn't include the last one, right? So it's basically, it says, yeah, it's 10, which means you will iterate from 0 to 10. So that's kind of how you have to think about it. I hope this didn't confuse you either. And let's see if I maybe let's store this in a string. So let's say hello should be, or I can say str. That's maybe a simpler way. So str will be this. I'll save this, store this in a variable just for some complexity, and this will be str. So we're looking at the length of this string, which will evaluate to 10 because it's 11 characters, and so we're iterating from 0 to 10. If you actually want the complete length, then it would be +1, right? So, but this is kind of a convenience because you don't want to have to worry about that, like -1, like you would do in many other programming languages. And then, so let's print out the actual value, and this is how you access a character of a string, right? At a certain index. So you say string, and then you add these two, and then you provide the actual index. So let's run this and see what happens. So we see hello world, right? So even though this is 11, so if I say print the length of the string +1, we should see 11 now, right? No, actually we don't. So I was mistaken. The length of the string is 11, of course. But when we iterate it, if we provide 11, then it will only iterate from 0 to 10. That's kind of what I was trying to explain before. Let's do this again. So let's look at this type of way of iterating through a sequence of data. So in this case, it's a string, but it could also be like a list. So a string has a length, right? So this string would be, so these are 5 characters, 10 characters, and then the space. So 11 characters, right? So if I print out the length of this string, I say print out the length of the string like this, we should see 11, right? So we see 11. So that's good. So, and if I print this out, if I print out just the index, we should see 0 to 10. So let's try this out. So it starts at 0 and then it goes to 10, right? So that's what I said before, that if you provide 11, which is what this evaluates to, you're actually iterating from 0 to 10. And so in other languages, you would have to say, in the for loop, you would say range -1, right? Because it would give you 11, and then you would have to say -1, because the last index is the index of 10, right? As I said before, that the first character is always at the index of 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the last character is 10. So it's always the length -1, right? And this, so Python is clever enough to provide, to do the subtraction for you, so to say. So you don't have to say -1, but it knows that it's 10. You're going to iterate from 0 to 10, which would be 11 times. So if I want to print the actual value, so for each index I want to print the character of this index, I can then access the value, or the character in this case, by providing the index to it like that. So it's kind of like looking up the value at a certain position of the string. So if I print this out, we should now see hello world with each character on each line. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.